I died to the sound of apologies. Liam crying, Stella swearing she never meant to hurt me. Then came the grinding of metal, shattered glass, and cold darkness. I didn't expect to open my eyes again, let alone to the buzzing of a cheap digital clock reading 6 a.m. On the most important day of my life. I haven't just survived a fatal crash. I've gone back to the day they ruined me. This time I hold the matches. My lungs seized. I shot up in bed gasping for air that didn't taste like gasoline and my own blood. My hands clawed at my chest expecting to feel the crushed ribs from the dashboard, but there was only the soft worn cotton of my old college t-shirt. I was breathing. I was whole. I stared at my hands. They were smooth absent the burn scars I'd carried for the last 5 years. I looked up. The popcorn ceiling of my childhood bedroom stared back at me illuminated by the pale gray light of early morning. It smelled like stale rain and the lavender fabric softener my mother used to buy before she got sick. A sharp abrasive buzz vibrated against the cheap fiberboard of my nightstand. My phone. Not the sleek smartphone I had in my 20s but an older model with a cracked screen protector. The screen glowed. May 15th. The date hit me like a physical blow. The air rushed out of my lungs again. This time not from phantom trauma but from the sheer crushing weight of memory. May 15th, the day of the national placement exams. The single, grueling 6-hour test that dictated university admissions, full-ride scholarships, and the trajectory of the rest of our lives. The screen lit up again. A text message. Liam. Morning, babe. Stella and I are picking you up at 7 o'clock. Got a shortcut planned. So we beat the rush. See you in a few. Love you. I stared at the black text in the glowing green bubble. My stomach performed a slow, sickening roll. Love you. In my previous life, I had smiled at that text. I had felt a warm rush of gratitude that my boyfriend and my best friend were so supportive, so eager to make sure we all got to the testing center together. I had put on the uncomfortable, stiff blue dress Liam liked, hurried downstairs, and climbed into the backseat of his silver Honda. I remembered what happened next with terrifying clarity. Liam had insisted on taking a shortcut through the lower industrial district. He claimed his dad, who worked for the city planner's office, told him it would bypass the morning gridlock. Except halfway through the labyrinth of one-way streets and abandoned warehouses, Liam's car mysteriously stalled. Stella panicked. She hyperventilated, claimed she was having an asthma attack, and demanded we find a pharmacy. Liam, playing the devoted hero, told me to run ahead to find help while he stayed to fix the car and comfort Stella. I ran for 2 miles in cheap flats. I found a clinic, begged them for help, and sprinted back. When I returned to the alley, the silver Honda was gone. I missed the exam. The doors locked at 8 a.m. I arrived, drenched in sweat, bleeding from blisters on my heels, at 8:14 a.m. The proctor didn't even look up from his newspaper as he turned me away. My future evaporated in an instant. It wasn't until 3 years later, after I had dropped out of community college to work double shifts to pay my mother's medical bills, that I found out the truth. Liam had stalled the car. He had simply turned the key off. There was no asthma attack. There was only a calculated plan to eliminate their biggest competition for the sole full-ride medical scholarship our district offered. I was smarter than Liam. I worked harder than Stella. They knew it. So, they removed me from the equation. And yesterday, or 5 years from now, depending on how time was functioning, I had finally confronted them in Liam's car. They confessed. Stella cried those perfect crystalline tears. Liam yelled that I was being dramatic, that it was a long time ago. Then he ran the red light. I slowly lowered the phone. I didn't cry. Crying is a luxury for people who still harbor some small, fragile hope that the world is fair. I threw my legs over the side of the bed. The hardwood floor was cold against my bare feet. It grounded me. I walked over to the mirror hanging on the back of my closet door. At 18, I looked exhausted. Dark circles bruised the skin under my eyes from months of relentless studying. But my eyes themselves were different. The girl who lived in this body yesterday had been anxious, desperate to please, terrified of losing the two people she loved most. The woman looking back in the mirror was empty. And out of that emptiness a very quiet, very cold fury began to crystallize. Liam and Stella wanted a shortcut. They were going to get one. I didn't reach for the blue dress. I walked to the bottom drawer of my dresser and pulled out a pair of gray sweatpants and a heavy black hoodie. The exam hall was notoriously freezing. A fact I had suffered through in my previous life when I finally retook the exam a year too late. My spirit already broken. Comfort was a weapon. I grabbed my clear plastic gallon bag, number 2 pencils, freshly sharpened, 3 black ink pens, my photo ID, my registration ticket, a high-protein granola bar, a bottle of water, no distractions, no unnecessary weight. I zipped the bag shut. The sound was deafening in the quiet room. It was 6:20 a.m. I had 40 minutes before they arrived. I moved silently down the hallway, pausing at my mother's door. It was slightly ajar. I could hear the rhythmic shallow draw of her breathing. In 2 years the illness they hadn't caught yet would confine her to a hospital bed. In my past life I couldn't afford the experimental treatments because I was drowning in minimum wage shifts. I pressed my palm flat against her doorframe. Not this time, I thought. The promise felt like swallowing a stone. I slipped down the stairs into the kitchen. I didn't turn on the lights. The gray dawn filtering through the window above the sink was enough. I poured a glass of water, drank it in 3 long swallows, and set the glass in the sink. At 6:35 a.m., a low, familiar rumble vibrated down the street. I froze. I knew the sound of a faulty muffler on a 2010 Honda Civic intimately. Liam was early. Of course he was early. If you're going to sabotage someone, you don't give them time to think, time to check the traffic reports, or time to change their minds. You blindside them. I moved to the front window, pressing my back against the wall, and peered through a tiny gap in the plastic blinds. The silver car idled at the curb. The streetlights bathed it in a jaundiced yellow glow. Through the windshield, I saw them. Liam was in the driver's seat, his hair perfectly gelled, wearing the crisp white button-down he always wore when he wanted adults to think he was responsible. Stella was in the passenger seat. She wasn't supposed to be there. In the text, Liam said they were picking me up. In the narrative they had fed me, Stella lived on the other side of town. But here she was, in the front seat, 25 minutes early. As I watched, Stella reached across the center console. She threaded her fingers into the hair at the nape of Liam's neck and pulled him in. They kissed. It wasn't a quick pack. It was deep, hungry, and entirely comfortable. It was the kiss of 2 people who had been doing this behind my back for months. I stared at them. I waited for the jealousy, the heartbreak, the burning sting of betrayal that had gutted me when I found out in my previous life. Nothing came, just that same chilling clarity. They looked like strangers, pathetic, small strangers. I pulled away from the window. My phone buzzed in my pocket. Liam, hey, we're outside early. Traffic looks weird on the map, so we want to jump the gun. Come out whenever you're ready. I unlocked my phone. I didn't type a reply. I just left the message open, so it would trigger a read receipt. Let him see that I saw it. Let him wait. I hoisted my backpack over my shoulder. I walked to the back door, quietly turned the deadbolt, and stepped out into the crisp morning air. The dew soaked through my canvas sneakers instantly. I didn't care. I walked across the backyard, hoisted myself over the low chain-link fence separating our property from the Andersons, and dropped into the alleyway behind our street. The subway station was 4 blocks away. It was a 20-minute ride to the university testing center. I pulled my hood up and started walking. I didn't look back. I knew exactly what they were doing right now. They were sitting in that idling car, smiling to themselves, entirely convinced that they held my strings. They thought they were the architects of my ruin. They had no idea the building was already empty. The subway station smelled like ozone, bleach, and old coffee. I swiped my transit card and pushed through the heavy metal turnstile. The platform was sparse, a few exhausted night shift nurses, a businessman violently tapping his foot, and me. I sat down on a wooden bench, the kind grooved and polished smooth by thousands of nervous bodies before me. I pulled my phone from my pocket. It was 6:48 a.m. The screen lit up. A missed call from Liam. 2 seconds later, it rang again. Liam's face, a sun-drenched candid I had taken of him at the lake last summer, flashed on the screen. He was laughing in the photo. It made my skin crawl. I pressed the volume down button to silence the ringing and watched the call screen minimize. Then came the texts. Liam, hey. Saw you read my text. You coming down? Liam, Chloe, Liam, babe, we got to go. Serious traffic building up on I-95. He wasn't lying about the traffic. That was the genius of his original plan. I knew from the radio news a few days ago in my past life that the I-95 bridge had a massive 4-car pileup at 6 a.m. today, compounded by a water main break on the lower grid. The entire south side of the city was about to become an inescapable parking lot. Liam's dad, working for the city, would have received the emergency alerts an hour ago. Liam knew the gridlock was happening. He planned to drive me right into the belly of it, stall the car, and then, while I ran for help, he and Stella would take the emergency access roads his dad had clearance for. My phone buzzed again. This time, it was Stella. Stella, Chloe, please hurry. I'm getting anxious about being late. You know how I get. Ah, the anxiety card. Always the victim. Always needing accommodation. In my previous life, I would have tripped over my own feet running out the door, terrified of making Stella uncomfortable. Now, I just stared at the words until the screen timed out and went black. The rumble of the approaching train vibrated through the soles of my shoes. The silver subway cars roared into the station, a rush of displaced air blowing my hood back. The doors slid open with a chime. I stepped onto the train, found a corner seat, and pulled my knees tightly together, resting my plastic bag in my lap. 7:02 a.m. Liam. Chloe, this isn't funny. Are you asleep? I'm coming to knock on the door. I pictured him getting out of the car, pounding on the front door, waking my sick mother, who would groggily tell him that she hadn't seen me, that I must have already left. The confusion setting in. The dawning panic when he realized his carefully constructed trap had snapped shut on thin air. 7:15 a.m. Liam. Your mom said you left. Where the hell are you? We are driving toward the center now. Are you on the bus? Stella. Chloe. What is wrong with you? We waited for 20 minutes. We're going to be late because of you. I leaned my head back against the cold window of the train. The tunnels flashed by, a blur of concrete and dim emergency lights. Up above, the city was waking up. Up above, Liam was likely speeding toward the lower industrial district, desperate to spot me at a bus stop, desperate to intercept me and force me into his car. He wouldn't take the highway because he knew it was a parking lot. He would take the surface streets. The exact surface streets where the water main had just burst, flooding the avenues and forcing the police to barricade the intersections. I checked my transit app. My train was perfectly on schedule. Running underneath the chaos, completely insulated from the catastrophe unfolding on the asphalt above. 7:35 a.m. The train breached the surface, riding the elevated tracks into the university district. The morning sun was bright, blindingly harsh, as it reflected off the glass facades of the campus buildings. I stood up, smoothing the front of my sweatshirt. My phone was exploding. Missed calls, 3 from Liam, 4 from Stella. The voicemails were stacking up. I walked off the train and down the steps to the street level. The campus was serene, a sharp contrast to the digital hysteria vibrating in my pocket. I walked past the manicured lawns, the bronze statues of founders, straight toward the heavy oak doors of the testing center. I pulled the door open. The air conditioning hit me instantly. It was freezing, just as I remembered. I showed my ID to the proctor at the front desk. A stern-faced woman who silently checked my name off a printed roster. Room 4B, row 3. No phones allowed past this point. Turn it off, she instructed. Yes, ma'am. I stepped to the side of the desk. I pulled my phone out all one last time. 7:45 a.m. 15 minutes until the doors locked. A final text pushed through. Liam, Chloe, please tell me you're at the center. We're stuck on 4th Avenue. The police blocked the road. The car won't start. Stella is screaming. We can't move. I read it twice. The panic in his words was palpable, frantic, and entirely real. There was no fake asthma attack this time. There was no shortcut. They were trapped in the exact cage they had built for me. I held down the power button. The screen prompted me to slide to power off. I swiped my thumb across the glass. The screen went black, cutting off their lifeline, silencing their panic, severing them from my reality. I dropped the lifeless phone into the bottom of my bag, zipped it shut, and walked into room 4B. I found my seat in row 3. I set my pencils in a perfectly straight line on the desk. I took a deep breath of the sterile, air-conditioned air. For the first time in 2 lifetimes, I was exactly where I was supposed to be. At exactly 8 a.m., the heavy oak doors at the back of the auditorium shut with a definitive, echoing thud. The brass deadbolt slid into place. A collective, nervous exhalation swept through the 200 students seated in the room. I didn't exhale. I just listened to the lock click. It was the exact sound I had imagined in my nightmares for 5 years. In my past life, that click had happened while I was sprinting up the front steps, my lungs burning, tears blurring my vision. I had slammed my fists against those doors, pressing my face to the narrow pane of frosted glass, begging the shadows inside to let me in. They hadn't. Now I was on the right side of the wood. The proctor, a severe man with wire-rimmed glasses, walked to the podium. He didn't offer a smile. He didn't offer encouragement. He just read the standardized rules from a laminated sheet in a droning, flat monotone. Cell phones off. No bathroom breaks for the first 2 hours. Pencils down when time is called or your test is invalidated. You may begin, he said, clicking a stopwatch. 200 test booklets flipped open in unison. It sounded like a flock of birds taking flight. I picked up my pencil. The graphite felt cool and solid against my fingertips. I looked at the first page, Advanced Calculus. For the next 6 hours, the world outside ceased to exist. There was no Liam. There was no Stella. There was no sick mother waiting in a quiet house. No mounting medical bills. No greasy diner shifts smelling of old fry oil. There was only the brutal, unforgiving logic of the questions and the terrifying sharpness of my own mind. The girl who took this test, or rather failed to take it in my past life, had been smart. But she had been frantic. She had spent the weeks leading up to the exam exhausted from managing Stella's manufactured crises and Liam's constant need for validation. I had no such distractions now. My mind was a steel trap. The equations practically solved themselves. The biology section, which had once felt like a dense thicket of Latin terms and complex cellular processes, now read like a simple instruction manual. I moved through the pages with a steady mechanical rhythm. Fill the bubble. Turn the page. Read the prompt. Fill the bubble. I was dissecting the exam, breaking it down into its component parts and executing it perfectly. At noon, we were given a mandatory 15-minute break in our seats. Most students dropped their heads to their desks, rubbing their temples, looking pale and defeated. The girl next to me was silently crying, her tears smudging the ink on her scratch paper. I sat perfectly still, eating my granola bar in small, deliberate bites. The silence of the hall was intoxicating. It was the sound of my future being rewritten, one filled bubble at a time. Pencils down, the proctor announced at exactly 2 p.m. I set my pencil in the groove of the desk. My hand was cramping. My neck was stiff. I felt a bone-deep exhaustion settling into my muscles. But beneath it, a quiet, roaring triumph. I had done it. I had survived the trap. We filed out of the auditorium in a staggered, exhausted line. When I pushed through the front doors of the building, the afternoon heat hit me like a physical wall. The campus was bathed in harsh golden sunlight. Students were scattered across the lawns, some laughing in relief, others looking shell-shocked. I walked to a quiet concrete bench beneath a large oak tree, sat down, and pulled my bag into my lap. I unzipped it. I pulled out my phone. I held the power button. The screen flashed white, displaying the brand logo, then transitioned to my lock screen. The phone immediately began to vibrate. It didn't stop. It buzzed in my palm like an angry, dying insect, downloading hours of bottlenecked hysteria. 47 missed calls. 112 text messages. 6 new voicemails. I tapped the voicemail icon and pressed the speaker to my ear. I didn't want to read the texts. I wanted to hear their voices. I wanted to hear the exact moment the realization set in. The first voicemail was from 8:05 a.m. It was Liam. "Chloe, are you in? Tell me you're in." The background noise was chaotic. Horns blaring. A siren wailing in the distance. He sounded out of breath. "We just got to the center. They wouldn't let us in. The doors are locked. The proctor threatened to call security on me. Did you get in? Call me back. Please, Chloe. Call me back right now." The second voicemail was from 8:20 a.m. Stella this time. "Where are you?" Her voice was shrill, cracking with panic. "Liam said your mom told him you left at 6:30. How did you get there?" "We're locked out, Chloe. We're locked out of the exam. My dad is going to kill me. The scholarship is gone. Call me back. You, where are you?" The venom in that last sentence made me smile. A small, cold twitch of the lips. There it was. The mask slipping. The sweet, fragile best friend routine dissolving the second she didn't get what she wanted. I skipped to the last voicemail left just 10 minutes ago. 1:50 p.m. It was Liam again. His voice was hollow, defeated. "Chloe, we're at your house. We're sitting on your porch. I don't understand what happened today. The car wouldn't start after we got stuck in the floodwater on 4th. The radiator cracked. We had to push it to a gas station. We missed the whole thing. Everything. I need to know you made it. Please tell me someone made it. Just come home. I lowered the phone from my ear. Just come home. He still thought he owned me. He still thought he was the center of my universe. That I would rush home to comfort him, to mourn his loss with him, oblivious to the fact that his loss was my survival. I dropped the phone back into my bag. I stood up, smoothing the wrinkles out of my gray sweatpants. It was time to go home. It was time to look them in the eye. The walk from the subway station to my house took exactly 12 minutes. I didn't rush. I let the warm afternoon air dry the cold, sterile sweat of the exam hall from my skin. When I turned onto my street, I saw it. Liam's silver Honda Civic wasn't parked in the driveway. It was slanted aggressively against the curb, one wheel up on the grass. The hood was propped open, a tragic display of mechanical failure, and a dark puddle of coolant was weeping onto the asphalt beneath it. Liam and Stella were sitting on the top step of my front porch. They looked awful. Liam had discarded his crisp white button-down. It was currently balled up next to him, covered in black grease stains. He wore a damp undershirt, his perfectly gelled hair flat and matted to his forehead with sweat. Stella looked worse. She was wearing a tailored yellow sundress, the kind of outfit you wear when you want to look effortlessly smart in a college ID photo. But the hem was splattered with muddy water. Her makeup, usually flawless, had streaked down her cheeks, leaving dark, hollow tracks beneath her eyes. They didn't look like the golden couple destined for medical school. They looked like two people who had just crawled out of a car wreck. I walked up the driveway. My sneakers made a soft scuffing sound against the concrete. Liam's head snapped up, his eyes locked onto me. For a split second, I saw a flash of pure, unadulterated hatred. It was visceral and raw, but he buried it instantly, replacing it with a mask of frantic, desperate relief. He scrambled to his feet. Chloe. Stella looked up, her expression tightening. She didn't stand. She just crossed her arms over her chest, digging her manicured nails into her own skin. Hey, I said. I stopped at the bottom of the steps. I didn't move toward them. I didn't offer a hug. I kept my voice flat, entirely devoid of the sympathetic inflection they were expecting. Where the hell were you? Liam demanded. He took a step down toward me, his hands running frantically through his ruined hair. We've been calling you for 6 hours. My phone is dead. Stella's phone is dead. We thought you were missing. My phone was off, I said simply. Proctor's rules. I just turned it back on. Stella stood up then. The grief in her eyes hardened into something sharp and brittle. You were in the exam? You actually took it? Yes. How? Liam asked. His voice was shaking. How did you get there? I texted you. I told you we were picking you up early. We were waiting right out here. He gestured wildly toward the street. We waited for 20 minutes. When I knocked on the door, your mom said you'd already left. I woke up early, I said, meeting his frantic gaze with a cool, deadpan stare. I couldn't sleep. I was anxious. I decided to just take the subway. I texted you back, Liam. Didn't you see it? It was a lie, of course. I hadn't texted him. But in the chaos of his morning, his broken car, and his dead battery, he couldn't verify it right now, and the seed of doubt was all I needed to plant. Liam blinked, his jaw going slack. You texted me? Yeah. I told you not to worry about me, and that I'd see you there. I figured you guys would just take the highway. I tilted my head, adopting a look of mild, detached confusion. Why didn't you take the highway? You guys missed it? The question hit them like a physical blow. The air rushed out of Liam. He slumped back against the wooden railing of the porch. The highway was jammed. He whispered, staring at his ruined shoes. Massive pileup. Dad sent an alert. I tried to take the surface streets through the industrial district to bypass it. And? I prompted, though I knew the answer perfectly well. A water main broke. Stella spat. The words sounded like poison in her mouth. She turned her glare onto Liam. The whole intersection at 4th and Elm was flooded. But Liam insisted his car could make it. He insisted we didn't have time to turn around. So we drove into it. I was trying to get us there. Liam yelled, rounding on her. The defensive panic was rising in his throat. I was trying to save our asses. If you hadn't taken 20 minutes to do your hair, we would have missed the flood entirely. Don't you dare blame my hair for your pathetic, rusted-out car stalling in a puddle. Stella screamed back. We pushed that piece of trash for 3 blocks. I missed the most important test of my life. Because you wanted to play race car driver through a swamp. I stood at the bottom of the steps and watched them. It was beautiful. In my past life, this anger, this venom, had been directed entirely at me. I had been the scapegoat. I had been the one sobbing on the sidewalk, apologizing for ruining everything, begging for their forgiveness while they graciously pretended to pity me. Now, the architecture of their lie had collapsed on top of them. Liam had designed the trap to look like an accident. He had chosen the industrial district specifically because it was isolated. He just hadn't accounted for a real, actual disaster happening on those exact streets. He played himself. "Guys," I said, my voice cutting through their shouting. They both stopped, chest heaving, and looked down at me. "I'm really sorry you missed it," I said. I made sure my face remained a blank, unreadable slate. I offered them absolutely nothing. No comfort, no shared grief. But yelling at each other isn't going to fix the radiator or your scores. Liam stared at me. It was in that moment, looking at my dry clothes, my calm demeanor, and the absolute lack of pity in my eyes, that I think he realized something was profoundly wrong. The Chloe he knew, the Chloe he had manipulated for 2 years, would be in hysterics right now. She would be hugging them. She would be offering to help pay for the car repairs. "You got the scholarship, didn't you?" Stella asked. Her voice had dropped to a quiet, dangerous whisper. "The medical ride. We all know you're going to ace it. With us out of the pool, you're the only one from our district who qualifies." She didn't sound happy for me. She sounded like I had stolen it out of her purse. "We'll see when the results come out," I said, adjusting the strap of my backpack. I stepped up onto the first stair, forcing them to slightly step back to give me space. "I'm exhausted. I need to go check on my mom." "Good luck with the car, Liam." I walked past them. I didn't look back as I pushed my front door open and stepped inside. I closed the door behind me, engaging the deadbolt with a loud, satisfying click. Through the thin wood of the door, I heard silence for about 10 seconds, and then the screaming started again. I leaned my back against the door, closed my eyes, and let out a long, slow breath. The smell of stale rain and lavender greeted me. The house was quiet. My mother was resting. I had survived the morning. I had secured my future. But as I listened to Liam and Stella tearing each other apart on my front lawn, I knew this wasn't the end. The exam was just the catalyst. They had lost their golden ticket, and people like Liam and Stella didn't just accept defeat. They looked for someone to blame. They were going to come for me. But this time, I wasn't running blind through an alleyway. This time, I knew all their plays before they even snapped the ball. Let them come. The Monday following the exam, the high school felt like a morgue. For the seniors, the national placement exams were the dividing line between childhood and consequence. Half the student body walked through the linoleum hallways with the dazed, hollow expressions of soldiers returning from a brutal campaign. The other half buzzed with a manic, nervous energy, loudly debating which formulas they had botched in Section 3. And then, there were Liam and Stella. They moved through the corridors like ghosts who hadn't realized they were dead yet. I was at my locker swapping out a frayed biology binder for a heavily highlighted history text when the smell of cheap aerosol body spray and stale coffee announced Liam's arrival. He leaned his shoulder against the metal locker next to mine. He was trying for his usual effortless charm, but the bags under his eyes were bruised a deep unhealthy purple. "Hey," he said. His voice was raspy. I closed my locker. "Hi. You haven't answered my calls all weekend." I was working. I lied seamlessly. In reality, I had spent the weekend sitting on the floor of my bedroom cataloging my mother's medication schedules and researching the specific oncology specialists I would soon be able to afford. Liam rubbed the back of his neck, a nervous tic I used to find endearing. "Look, Chloe, things were pretty heated on Friday." Stella was hysterical. I was stressed. "I'm sorry for snapping at you." He waited for me to soften. He waited for the familiar script to play out where I would rush to reassure him, tell him it was okay, and absorb his anxiety like a sponge. I just looked at him. I looked at the slight tremor in his fingers and the desperate calculating shift of his eyes. "It's fine, Liam," I said, my voice dead flat. "It's over now." He flinched. The lack of emotion in my tone unnerved him. "Right. Well, it's not totally over." He leaned in closer, dropping his voice to a conspiratorial whisper. "My dad has been talking to the school board. We're filing a formal petition for a makeup exam. An emergency proxy." "A proxy?" I asked. "Yeah. Due to unforeseen catastrophic circumstances, the water main break. It prevented a significant portion of students from testing. He paused, licking his dry lips. We need your help, Chloe. My help? The board needs witness statements to prove how chaotic the morning was. How the district failed to provide safe transit. We need you to sign a statement saying you were in the car with us. I stared at him. The sheer blinding audacity of it actually took my breath away for a fraction of a second. He wanted me to commit academic fraud. He wanted me to put my own spotless record, my own freshly secured test score, on the line to corroborate a lie. A lie designed to save him from the consequences of a trap he built for me. In my previous life, I had begged him to petition the board for me. He had told me, with a sad, pitying smile, that the rules were the rules, and I just had to accept community college. You want me to lie to the state education board, I said slowly. It's not a lie. It's just adjusting the timeline, Liam pleaded, his hand reaching out to grab my wrist. I stepped back, letting his hand drop into empty air. Come on, Chloe. We're a team. If I don't get this makeup test, I lose the med school track. My dad will kick me out. You know how he is. I took the subway, Liam. Nobody knows that, he hissed, his frustration finally fracturing his charming facade. You just sign the paper. Say you were in the car. Say we all got stuck, and say you only made it because you ran the last 3 miles on foot while we stayed with the broken car. It makes you look like a hero. It makes us look like victims. Everyone wins. No. The word hung in the air between us, sharp and absolute. Liam blinked. What do you mean, no? I mean no. I'm not signing a fraudulent statement. I adjusted my backpack on my shoulder. If you wanted to take the test so badly, you should have taken the highway. I didn't wait for his response. I turned and walked down the crowded hallway, leaving him stranded by the lockers. At lunch, the campaign shifted. Stella took over. I was sitting in the library enjoying the quiet hum of the air conditioning when she slid into the chair across from me. She didn't look angry. She looked tragic. It was her best look. Chloe, she whispered, reaching across the scarred wooden table to rest her hand near mine. Her eyes were brimming with unshed tears. Please tell me you and Liam didn't really fight this morning. I kept my eyes on my history textbook. We didn't fight. I just told him I wasn't going to lie to the school board. A microscopic tightening pinched the corners of Stella's eyes, gone as quickly as it appeared. It's just a signature, Chloe. It's not a big deal. Why are you being like this? You made it. You got what you wanted. Why are you punishing us for getting stuck in a flood? I'm not punishing you. The universe punished you, I said, finally looking up. I'm just refusing to go down with the ship. Stella pulled her hand back as if I had burned her. The tragic act dissolved, replaced by a cold, venomous glare. You think you're so untouchable now, don't you? Because you got lucky. Because you slipped out the back door like a coward, while we were waiting for you. Waiting for me. I repeated, letting a slow, cynical smile touch my lips. Is that what you were doing in the front seat of his car, Stella? Waiting? Her breath hitched. A pale, sickly color washed over her face. She opened her mouth to speak, but nothing came out. The panic in her eyes was a beautiful, jagged thing. She didn't know how much I knew. She didn't know what I had seen through the living room blinds. The uncertainty paralyzed her. I closed my textbook, the heavy thud echoing in the quiet library. Don't talk to me again, Stella, I said quietly. Neither of you. Stay away from me. I walked out of the library. My chest felt lighter than it had in 5 years. That evening, I sat on the edge of my mother's bed. The house was quiet, filled only with the rhythmic ticking of the hallway clock and the soft hum of her oxygen concentrator. She was awake, her thin hands resting on top of a patchwork quilt. You look different, Chloe, she murmured, her voice weak, but her eyes sharp. Different how? I asked, gently brushing a stray lock of graying hair from her forehead. Lighter, but harder, too. She offered a small, tired smile. Did something happen with Liam? In my past life, I would have broken down. I would have sobbed into her blankets, burdening her failing heart with my ruined future and my shattered relationship. I would have made her worry. This time, I just smiled. It was a real smile, anchored deep in my bones. Nothing bad, Mom, I promised, squeezing her hand. Liam is just a boy. I have bigger things to worry about now. She squeezed back. Good. You have the whole world in front of you, sweetheart. Don't let anyone make it small. I looked at the framed photograph on her nightstand, a picture of me at 10 years old, holding a plastic stethoscope to a stuffed bear's chest. The medical track, the scholarship, it wasn't just a point of pride anymore. It was survival. It was a weapon against the illness slowly eating away at the only person who actually loved me. Liam and Stella thought the exam was about prestige. They thought it was a game. They were about to find out exactly what happens when you try to play a game with someone fighting for their life. The notification arrived exactly 6 weeks later, on a Tuesday at 3:14 p.m. I was sitting on a concrete bench in the school courtyard. The air was thick with the suffocating humidity of late June. The academic year was effectively over. Seniors were just killing time, signing yearbooks, and holding their collective breath for the state servers to update. My phone vibrated in my lap. Sender, National Board of Educational Assessment. Subject, your May 15th examination results are now available. The courtyard was relatively quiet. A few yards away, Liam and Stella were sitting on the grass beneath a sprawling oak tree. They were surrounded by a small circle of their friends, but the atmosphere was grim. Their petition for a makeup exam had been formally denied a week prior. The board cited a lack of verifiable proof and a strict adherence to testing protocols. Their futures were currently suspended in freefall. I didn't look at them. I clicked the link in the email. The portal took agonizing seconds to load. The blue progress bar crawled across the top of the screen. I felt my heart beating a slow, heavy rhythm against my ribs. I knew I had done well. I remembered the flawless execution of the equations, the absolute certainty of the biology section. But memory is a fragile thing. And the trauma of my past life still whispered in the dark corners of my mind, telling me I wasn't meant to win. The screen refreshed. A block of text appeared, followed by a neatly formatted table. Composite score, 99.8%. National ranking, 14. District ranking, 1. Beneath the table, a bolded paragraph flashed in green text. Congratulations! Based on your district ranking and composite score, you have been conditionally awarded the Harrison Medical Foundation Fulbright Scholarship. Pending final transcript verification. I stopped breathing. The air rushed out of my lungs, leaving a vacuum of pure, vibrating shock. I stared at the numbers until the screen blurred. It was real. The money was real. The tuition, the housing, the stipend, my mother's specialists, the treatments, the life I had watched burn to ash 5 years ago was suddenly, violently handed back to me. I closed my eyes and let the hot summer air wash over my face. I didn't cheer. I didn't cry. I just sat there and let the gravity of the numbers anchor me to the earth. Did they drop? The voice was hollow and grating. I opened my eyes. Liam was standing a few feet away. The rest of the courtyard had gone dead silent. Students were staring at their phones. Some gasping, some swearing softly. The results were out for everyone. Liam looked like a hollowed-out shell of the boy he was 2 months ago. The stress of the denied petition and the looming reality of community college had stripped him of his arrogance. Stella was right behind him. Her arms crossed tightly over her chest, chewing on her lower lip until it bled. Yes, I said quietly, locking my phone and slipping it into my pocket. And Liam stepped closer. There was a desperate, ugly hunger in his eyes. He wanted me to fail. He needed me to fail. Just so he wouldn't be alone in the dirt. How bad was it? I stood up. I smoothed out the front of my shirt. I looked at him. Really looked at him. Stripping away the history and the betrayal. Seeing only a frightened, mediocre boy. I got the Harrison Scholarship. I said. My voice wasn't loud, but in the quiet courtyard, it carried. Several heads snapped in our direction. Liam froze. The color drained from his face so fast I thought he might pass out. His mouth opened, but no sound came out. He just stared at me, his eyes wide and blank. Behind him, Stella let out a sharp, involuntary gasp. It sounded like a physical injury. No. She whispered. No, you didn't. They don't award that until July. They award it conditionally based on the district ranking. I replied, keeping my gaze locked on Liam. I ranked first. Liam's chest began to heave. The shock was rapidly curdling into a desperate, frantic denial. He reached out, his hand grasping for my arm. Chloe, that's incredible. We did it. You did it. That means you're going to the city. I can apply to the state school nearby. We can still make this work. I can move with you. The delusion was staggering. He was drowning. and he was trying to use my spine as a life raft. I looked down at his hand gripping my forearm. Then I looked up, catching Stella's eye over his shoulder. She was vibrating with a silent, toxic rage. "Take your hand off me, Liam," I said. He blinked, confused, his grip tightening instinctively. "What? Chloe, babe, what are you talking about?" "I'm talking about the fact that we're done." I forcefully ripped my arm out of his grasp. He stumbled forward a half step. "We've been done since May 15th. "You're breaking up with me?" he stammered, his voice cracking loudly. A few students nearby turned fully around to watch. "Because you got a scholarship? Because you think you're better than me now? After everything we've been through? After I got screwed over by a flood?" "You didn't get screwed over by a flood, Liam," I said, my voice dropping to a low lethal register. "You got screwed over because you tried to drive through a flooded industrial zone to avoid a highway. I was trying to get us to the test," he yelled, the panic making him reckless. "You were trying to stall the car." The silence that followed was absolute. Liam stopped breathing. Stella flinched violently, taking a step backward. I stepped into Liam's space, closing the distance between us. "You planned it. You mapped it out. You were going to drive us into the lower district, turn off the engine and play the hero while I ran for help. You wanted to eliminate the competition. The water main break just beat you to the punch." "You're insane," Liam whispered, his eyes darting frantically around the courtyard, terrified of who was listening. "You're actually crazy. You have no proof of that. You're making things up because you feel guilty for leaving us." "I don't feel guilty." I turned my attention to Stella. She looked terrified. "And I don't need proof. I don't care if the school board believes me. I don't care if anyone here believes me. I just need you both to know that I know." I stepped closer to Stella. She pressed her back against the rough bark of the oak tree. I reached out, my hand moving swiftly to the collar of her shirt. I hooked my finger around a thin silver chain resting against her collarbone and pulled it outward. A small silver locket popped out from beneath the fabric. It caught the sunlight gleaming sharply. I recognized it instantly. In my past life, I had found it under the passenger seat of Liam's car a year after the exam. Stella gasped, slapping her hand over mine to hide it. But it was too late. Liam saw it. "I saw it. Keep him, Stella," I said softly, letting the chain slip from my fingers. "You two deserve exactly what you got." I turned my back on them and walked away. Behind me, the courtyard erupted into frantic, hushed whispers. I didn't look back to see Liam trying to explain the necklace. I didn't look back to see Stella crying real tears for the first time in her life. I just walked out of the school gates into the blinding heat of the summer and toward a future that belonged entirely to me. The rumors moved faster than the summer heat. By Friday, the entire senior class knew. They didn't know the specifics of the sabotage. That was a truth only 3 of us shared. But they knew Liam and Stella had been sleeping together behind my back. The silver locket had been all the proof anyone needed. I didn't stick around to watch the social execution. I had picked up extra shifts at the diner. The Harrison scholarship covered tuition, room, and board, but it didn't cover the deposits for my mother's new specialized care facility near the university. It was a Tuesday night, a week after the results dropped. The diner was dead. It smelled of heavy industrial bleach, stale fryer oil, and burnt filter coffee. I was behind the counter scraping a layer of burnt grease off the flat-top grill with a heavy metal spatula. The bell above the glass door chimed. I didn't look up. "Booth or counter? Sit anywhere. Give me a minute." Footsteps scuffed across the black and white checkered linoleum. They stopped right across the counter from me. "Chloe." I stopped scraping. I set the spatula down on the metal rim of the grill. I grabbed a damp rag, turned around, and began wiping the already clean laminate counter. Liam looked like a hollowed-out building. He had lost weight. The crisp, arrogant posture that usually defined him was gone, replaced by a severe slouch. He wore a faded gray t-shirt and jeans with grease stains on the knees. "We're closed in 20 minutes, I said. I didn't make eye contact. I focused entirely on a stubborn coffee stain near the sugar dispenser. "I don't want coffee," he rasped. I stopped wiping. I finally looked at him. The bags under his eyes were bruised and heavy. His hands, resting on the edge of the counter, were trembling slightly. "Stella dumped me," he said. The words came out sounding like a confession. Like he expected me to grant him absolution. "I'm working, Liam." She blamed the whole thing on me, he continued, his voice rising in a frantic, desperate pitch. He ignored my dismissal completely. She told her parents it was my idea to take the shortcut. She told everyone about the locket, but she twisted it. She said I manipulated her. She said I threatened to ruin her if she didn't go along with it. I tossed the damp rag into the stainless steel sink beneath the counter. Did you? Liam blinked. Did I what? Manipulate her. Threaten her. No, Chloe. You know me. You know I would never do that. I let out a short, dry laugh. It sounded harsh in the empty diner. I don't know you at all, Liam. The person I knew wouldn't have tried to maroon me in an industrial park on the most important day of my life. He flinched as if I had physically struck him. He looked down at his hands, his throat working as he swallowed hard. My dad kicked me out. The words hung in the air, heavy and pathetic. In my past life, this would have been the moment my heart broke for him. This would have been the moment I threw my arms around him, offered him my couch, offered him my meager savings, and tethered myself to his sinking ship. I felt absolutely nothing. The well was completely dry. He found out about the petition being denied, Liam whispered, his voice cracking. He found out I tried to bypass the gridlock and ruin the car. He told me I was a liability. He told me to pack a bag. He looked up, his eyes glassy with unshed tears. I'm sleeping in my car, Chloe. The one with the cracked radiator. It's parked behind the bowling alley. He was waiting for the rescue. He was sitting at the bottom of the pit he dug himself, waiting for me to lower the rope. You should probably get a job then, I said evenly. They're hiring down at the lumberyard on 9th Street. It pays minimum wage, but the hours are steady. Liam stared at me. The vulnerability in his expression slowly curdled into a dark, ugly resentment. The realization hit him that the old Chloe, the soft, pliable girl he had relied on, was truly dead. You're a cold, you know that, he spat, the venom returning to his voice. I am. I agreed calmly. I reached under the counter and grabbed my purse. I learned from the best. Now get out of my diner. I have to lock up. He didn't move for a long 5 seconds. He just glared at me, his fists clenching and unclenching. Then he turned and walked out. The bell chimed a hollow goodbye. I watched him cross the parking lot, his shoulders hunched against the warm night air. He looked small, insignificant, a ghost haunting his own ruined life. I locked the door, flipped the open sign to closed, and walked into the back room to clock out. I had $30 in tips in my pocket, a full-ride scholarship waiting in the fall, and a mother who was finally going to see a real doctor. I didn't look out the window again. August arrived with a suffocating, heavy heat. It baked the concrete of the city and turned the air into soup. Moving day was a quiet affair. I didn't hire a company. I rented a small, dented U-Haul box truck with the money I had saved from the diner. My mother sat in the passenger seat of the cab. The air conditioning was blasting, ruffling the thin collar of her floral blouse. She looked frail, but there was a new light in her eyes, a spark of genuine hope. The initial consultation with the oncology specialists at the university hospital had gone incredibly well. The Harrison Foundation didn't just provide tuition. They provided a comprehensive health stipend for dependents. It was a detail I had aggressively researched and confirmed 3 times over. I finished loading the last cardboard box into the back of the truck. It contained winter clothes and a few photo albums. I pulled the heavy metal roll-up door down. It slammed shut with a definitive ringing crash. I snapped the padlock closed. I stood in the driveway and looked at the house. The paint was peeling around the window frames. The front lawn was patchy and brown from the August heat. This was the house where I had mourned a stolen future in my past life. This was the house where I had watched my mother waste away while I worked myself to the bone. It was just wood and siding now. It held no power over me. I walked around to the driver's side of the U-Haul and climbed in. The vinyl seat was hot against the back of my legs. Ready? I asked, putting the key into the ignition. My mother smiled, reaching out to pat my knee. More than ready, sweetheart. Let's go. I put the truck in gear and pulled out of the driveway. I drove carefully, navigating the narrow suburban streets. We passed the high school. It looked entirely abandoned, baking silently in the sun. We passed the small local park where Liam had first asked me out. We passed the intersection where Stella used to wait for me to walk her home. It all looked like a movie set for a film I had stopped watching years ago. As we approached the on-ramp for the interstate, I stopped at a red light. On the corner, next to a dilapidated gas station, a figure was standing on the blistering concrete, holding a squeegee. It was Liam. He was wearing a neon green reflective vest over a stained t-shirt. He was working the full-service pumps, sweating profusely, his face flushed and sunburned. A large, expensive-looking SUV pulled up to the pump. The driver, a middle-aged man in a suit, barked an order out the window. Liam flinched, his posture shrinking as he hurried to unscrew the gas cap. He looked up just as the light turned green. For a fraction of a second, his eyes met mine through the windshield of the U-Haul. I saw the flash of recognition. I saw the shame, immediately followed by a bitter, hollow regret. He froze, the squeegee dripping dirty water onto his boots. I didn't smile. I didn't scowl. I didn't feel the sharp, vindictive thrill of revenge that I thought I would. I just felt tired. And then, I felt free. I took my foot off the brake and pressed the accelerator. The heavy truck groaned as it lurched forward, pulling onto the interstate. The gas station, Liam, and the suffocating gravity of my old life shrank in the rearview mirror until they were swallowed completely by the heat haze on the asphalt. The opposite of love isn't hate. It's indifference. It's the realization that some people are simply lessons you had to learn the hard way. Obstacles you had to outmaneuver. I rolled my window down an inch. The wind rushed in, loud and chaotic, and intensely warm. "You okay?" my mother asked over the roar of the engine. I looked at the open highway stretching out in front of us. The lanes were clear. The sky was a bright violet blue. I thought about the girl who died in a car wreck 5 years from now, crying over a boy who didn't love her and a friend who despised her. I left her behind in the wreckage. "Yeah," I said, my voice steady and strong. "I'm perfectly fine." That's the end of Chloe's story. Sometimes the universe gives you a second chance, and sometimes you just have to take it by the throat. If you loved watching a brilliant mind systematically dismantle the people who tried to ruin her, hit that like button right now. Subscribe to the channel and ring the bell so you never miss a new story. I want to hear from you in the comments. What would you have done if you found out your best friend and your boyfriend plotted against you? Would you expose them or walk away? Drop your answers below and I'll see you in the next video.